Beyond the Scoreboard we go here on the Lawrence County SportsNet podcast series. You're delivered by Penn Ohio Bottled Water, our bi-weekly updates. We're going to start getting a little bit amped up because it is the stretch run here coming at the end of the basketball regular season. Just a handful of games left to go before it is playoffs time coming up here. WPL playoffs coming up in just over a week. District 10 coming up a week later as well. But it is postseason time. It is stretch run time. I mean, we got to go. We got to go old school. The originator of the stretch run, Sir Don Rebel from the Trib Live High School Sports Network. How about this? Don is joining us on the podcast today. Thank you, Mr. Rebel, for joining the fun.
Well, I feel it's my obligation since you've been on so many of mine and helping me out. The least I could do is help you out if you call what I'm going to be doing here help. But my pleasure, James.
Oh, help for sure. You know everything in and out when it comes to the WPIAL basketball, football, golf, cross country, just about everything. We know.
Wow, you're really stretching it now.
Before we talk about hoops, Don, I know playoffs officially begin tonight for the first team sport. With wrestling matches beginning here this evening for the postseason. Just talk about the not just hoops, but the entire winter season and how it does drag on at times, but all of a sudden we're gonna be ramping up and going crazy, aren't we?
Well, it's the weather that makes it feel like it's dragging on. I think everybody gets sick of that, especially this winter. We were kind of spoiled the last two winters. This winter, some consistent snow, the bitter cold Arctic temperatures from last week. So I think everybody gets sick of that. But boy, the actual winter sports seasons, like really everything. We'll be getting ready for kickoff, doing preview shows in August, and you blink, and next thing you know, it's November. So the wrestling, the team wrestling, they have their quick 1 week tournament, WPIL tournament, then the state tournament, and then they focus on the individual. That lasts nearly a month. The individual stuff, district and then statewide. But I had an interesting little factoid. I know you love your factoids in wrestling this decade. And I took out 2021 because it was a condensed tournament. But in the 2020, 22, 23, 24, so four playoff tournaments in WPL wrestling, the schools that have hosted tonight the first round quarterfinals in Class 3A were like 15-1 combined. You get a top four seed and you get to host first round and quarterfinals. It's almost a ticket to ride into the semifinals. The numbers weren't as great, 13-3 in 2A, which is still pretty good, but not as great as in 3A. So, those teams that have earned top four buys and will be hosting tonight, good chance they will advance to the semifinals and championships, which are on Saturday at Peters Township.
Yeah, nice little factoid that we personally here with Lawrence County kind of hope that gets thrown under the rug and that we can be a number that gets rid of that with Laurel traveling down for one of those matches, right. Taking on Best Center first and then taking on they hope taking on McGuffey after that, looking to advance into the quarters and then the semifinals. Best of luck to them. That going on here this evening. We'll keep you posted on that. If you're following on social media, we'll get you all those updates throughout the evening. But let's get into it here with the stretch run. Just a few games left to go. We'll start on the ladies' side. We'll work our way up, start with Class 1A. Because you have the undefeated Union Scotties. I had to bring it out there for you, Don. The Lady Scots still undefeated. 3 teams remaining that are undefeated in the WPIAL on the girls' side. And, with the years that they've had, back-to-back champions, you knew Union was going to be good. But with the graduation of the seniors the last couple of years, especially Kelly Cleaver, I'm not sure anybody expected Union to be one of the last of the unbeatens come this time of the year.
No, and this is, I think Class A on both sides is improved. It's smaller. The numbers aren't there. More so for the girls uh, than the boys. Um, so it's not only the smallest classification enrollment wise, but team wise as well. It's starting to, fight Class 6A for that honor. But yeah, Coach Nogue's done a tremendous job. He has built a program, and programs never rebuild, right? They reload, and even if they aren't championship material, they're still a contender. And I think that's where we are with this union program. And again, it's impressive in that there is some talent around Class A. The Scotties will be battling St. Joe's, the rematch from the two finalists a year ago, on Thursday. Aquinas Academy, the team they beat 2 years ago, also in this section, also in the hunt. But the Scotties have built themselves a nice little gap. Kylie Frustorfer, right?
Yes.
I don't want to butcher Miss Kylie's name because she is having another great season. She was a big part of that championship run a year ago. And then you sort of, she's got the Scotties in a good spot. Union 2 games up on St. Joe's, going into that game 3 up on the Crusaders of Aquinas Academy. Flip it over to the other section, and you have the 2 leading scorers doing battle near the top of Section 2. Emma Larkin, who was our WPL Girls Basketball Player of the Week this past week, from Geibel Catholic. They've only lost 1 game, and that was earlier this year to Clairton. Ayanna Wade was shattering records. She's well on her way to getting the 3,000 point mark and entering the top 5 of all-time scorers in WPL history. Bears now have fallen, though, out of first place. They're 1 game behind Geibel Catholic, and Sarah Catholic's right there too. So there's some depth. If Union is able to three-peat, they're going to earn their way, because while early on, the 4th and 5th place teams, I think in each section, might offer little resistance. Those teams I talked about, top 3 really in each section, are pretty good.
A win against St. Joe's on Thursday does mean Union would get the outright section crown there as well. But you're right, Geibel and Clairton and Sarah Catholic, 3 very strong teams with some prolific scorers on the other side. I mean, you look at Clairton, 65 points a game, but Union doing what they've been doing defensively, averaging just 27 points allowed per contest. And I think the big key for Union, they only have 10 on the roster. 9 of them, though, lettered a year ago. They have the experience. They have a lot of balance of scoring, which has been the key. And talking about records, we're trying to find the record up here, Dawn, for a Lawrence County gal for most 3-pointers made either in a season or a career, because there are a couple up here, Frustorfer being one of them, but also Leah Crayrup for Wilmington. The career threes numbers for both of these senior girls are off the charts. Unofficially, Frustorfer at 230 threes made, Crayrup at 235 for Wilmington in their career. We're working to see what kind of record that may or may not be for either one of them, but we can't think of anybody in recent memory, at least, in Lawrence County history that would have as many trifectas. So more work that we're going to be doing, but those 2 teams obviously still have a little bit more work to do as well. Real quick, talking about Wilmington, you had Wilmington and Kennedy Catholic ranked number 1 and 2 in the state rankings a couple of weeks ago. The trip to Kennedy Catholic didn't go well for the Hounds. They've had a couple of close games after that, still fighting through, getting ready for that rematch coming up in a couple of weeks. But this is a Wilmington team that's still their only loss on the season. Wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those matchups you see 3, maybe even 4 times in a single season, the way it's kind of shaping up.
Yeah, it was the Hounds had not lost going into that game against Kennedy Catholic, and I was anxious to see how that would play out. Just did the our state rankings that will be coming out later on here on Wednesday, and Kennedy Catholic still number 1, Wilmington I think at number 3. But yeah, I mean, uh, to only have that loss to the Golden Eagles as your only blemish shows you what kind of talent the Greyhounds have. And I think you mentioned they have another regular season game together.
Yeah, they play again
Okay.
February the 10th or 11th, something like that. Yeah, once it's during the first week of what WPIL playoffs would be, is the last week of the District 10 regular season, and they will have the rematch at Wilmington.
Yeah, and you want to split. You're home.
Mm-hmm.
A tall task, but you want to split, if for nothing else, knowing that, again, like you mentioned, you might see them in the District 10 playoffs. You might see them eventually in the PIAA playoffs. And if you're 0-2 against them, confidence can be a fickle thing. But if you can even the score, then there's really no edge if they do meet in the D10 playoffs. If they do meet in the state playoffs, there's really no edge for either team.
Yeah, and those two are going to be top in Region 1 for District 10. No questions asked there. 9-0 for Kennedy Catholic, 8-1 right now for the Hounds. You mentioned about evening the score as we go to WPIL Class 2A. That's what Neshannock was able to do earlier this week. Talk about revenge in a big way. An overtime loss down at Aliquippa. Quips come up to Lawrence County, and it's a mercy rule victory in the end as Neshannock was able to defeat Aliquippa in that one. So those two tied atop the section ranks, 6-1 records. Neshannock now 16-2 overall, but that's a big, big response from Coach G's squad right there, Don.
Yeah, impressive. Again, that's one of those games where if you're any sort of basketball fan, no matter what, you know what they did. You know what Aliquippa did to them the first time around. So you're anxious to see, can Neshannock even the score? And wow, they not only even the score, they really waylaid the Quips, who are having a fantastic season. They sort of had their breakout year a year ago, and it has continued as they're in search of their first championship since I think like late 80s, early 90s. Neshannock, no stranger to the gold. Loanne Grabowski continues to do a tremendous job. One of the all-time greats, no matter in WPL history. Period. Doesn't matter sport. Doesn't matter gender. I think that victory and how it was accomplished will likely get them the number 1 seed. If again they take care of business here over the next week and a half. You take a look at the other section leaders: Winchester, Thurston, Chartiers, Houston, and Fort Cherry, all having good seasons. All will be competitive into the postseason, but they don't have the impressive resume or background, if you will. And I know some people get upset when a team's past comes into play for this year, but when the committee gets together to hammer out these brackets, they're looking at all aspects. And if they're like having a hard time deciding team A, team B, and team C, and team A has, won multiple championships over the last few years, they're probably going to get the edge. You just look for little things to break certain ties when you're building those brackets. So I don't have a problem. I don't think you can lean on that, but you can use it as a tiebreaker. And the how impressive they were in that 30-point victory over the Quips, I think puts them, again, take care of business as the clear top seed when the 2A brackets come out.
Yeah, you said it right there. An overtime loss, but then a 30-point victory. That definitely, I think, puts the trump. Also, just in terms of ranking Neshannock versus Aliquippa, I think that makes a difference of winning the second game in the meeting, in the season, I should say. That definitely, I think, makes a big difference as well. But also look at the overall records. Neshannock's only other loss comes to a 6A school in Seneca Valley, who
a good 6A school.
Yeah, very good 6A school. You're right. So you look at the other teams as well, who are their losses coming to in the regular season. I think that's something that you also have to keep in mind as well. The rest of Section 1, real quick, as those two are tied at 6-1. Rochester at 4-3. Laurel at 3-4. A big win over Rochester earlier this week as well. They're not officially in yet. One more win, and they will have secured a playoff berth there. They play Aliquippa on Thursday, and Aliquippa will be without one of their players who was ejected for 2 technicals in the game against Neshannock as well. So one of the top scorers for the Quips, Honesty Johnson, will not be in for that game. But Coach LaRocco, first year at Laurel, he knows championship pedigree, taking Shenango to the title a few years ago. Chance with one more win to get the Spartans in the playoff hunt there as well. Bump up to Class 3A real quick. The 3 sections in Class 3A, and also the unique factor this year where you have the 8-team section. So 5 will be guaranteed playoffs in each of these sections. And it is a logjam. After Olsh in the top spot there in Section 1, Riverside, Beaver Falls, Quaker Valley in a 3-way tie for second at the moment. Elwood City a game behind them at 6-5. And then Mohawk still in with a chance. It's going to be tough sledding, though, as they are 2 games behind of Elwood City, and they've lost both games head-to-head. But the Wolverines, one more win for them, and they should be playoff bound. And again, a young, or not a young squad, a small squad with only 9 on the roster and a first-year coach. Kudos to what they've been able to do with a couple of big namers, including one who's probably going to eclipse 1,000 points tomorrow night in Kayla Jones.
Yeah, and Delaney Sturgeon's having a good year too, as well, for the Wolverines. They do benefit. They're right on the cusp of possibly moving up the ladder. If they finish strong, they're only a game behind the Panthers, the Tigers, and the Quakers right now. So yeah, they're worried about sealing the deal first on a playoff berth. But hey, the more you can move up 1-2 spots and finish maybe third in a pretty competitive Section 1. That definitely is going to help in the seeding. It's going to be a kind of bloated Section 3, only 3 sections, but I think 8 teams in all 3. No, not Section 3. They'll only take the top 4 teams. But still, any way you can help yourself in the seeding process, and that's what Elwood City's going to be focused on is, hey, not only do we want to clinch, we want to move up and get a better seed.
Yeah, Mohawk gave him a fight. Another young team with a very minimal roster, first-year coach. That was a fun game for 3 quarters earlier this week. But again, shout out to, you mentioned Delaney Sturgeon, big second half. Caitlin Kreitzer's playing great the second half of the year as well. Elwood City, a team you don't want to sleep on. I know that record doesn't look great, but they are playing some good ball and can definitely put the ball in the hoop. And you mentioned Shady Side Academy for Section 2. I think one of the teams, though, to watch for sure. Them and Greensburg Central Catholic, they have to be 2 of the front runners, you would think, across the entire classification.
I thought we had our girls basketball team of the week this past week was Our Lady of the Sacred Heart. They are the leaders in Section 1. They ran away and hid from everybody. Dawn Eckerly, veteran coach. They have a very good team, kind of on the young side, but very balanced. They have a little bit of size, but they rely on guard play. So, that's a team that I think has a good chance to go deep. But those 2 top teams in Section 2, Shady Side Academy, Greensburg Central Catholic, they met once already with Shady Side winning at home. The Bulldogs and Centurions go at it in Greensburg next week. And in all likelihood, if Greensburg wins, I'm not sure one of them gets the top seed. Maybe Olsh sneaks the top seed from those 2. But it'll be interesting to see if the committee keeps the Centurions and Bulldogs apart, because that's what usually happens when you have 2 dominant teams. You don't want them on the same side of the bracket.
It's Beyond the Scoreboard podcast here in the Lawrence County SportsNet as we tap back into our our affiliation with the Trib Live High School Sports Network. And Don Rebel kind enough to join us here today. Give a shout out again to Penn Ohio Bottled Water. Give them a call for delivery of your 3 to 5 gallon water cooler systems or cases of bottles delivered straight to your home or work. And don't forget about their custom label options. The good news about both the girls and boys playoffs is that for Lawrence County teams at least, Don, not a lot of question marks or needing to win that very last game next week to be able to get into the playoffs. For the most part, it looks like we know what the scenario is going to be. Mentioned Mohawk, if they can win, they would need to win out to be able to sneak into the playoffs in Class 3A. But for the most part, everything is kind of locked in. On the boys' side, it's very interesting, though, in terms of the seeding of all these teams. Again, most of the playoff spots locked in, but let's start at 6A. And this is what we were hoping for with the new look 6A this year. Kind of a lot of parity, especially in Section 1. Any given day, any given team can go and win a ball game. And we've definitely seen that, especially with this Newcastle team. A couple of head-scratching losses early on, Seneca Valley and especially Woodland Hills about a week ago, but they're able to hold serve and in a big way just last night, a game that you guys had on the network there with Trib Live. Newcastle taking care of business on the road in Harmony and defeating Seneca Valley, and really going to make that rematch against Fox Chapel now a huge one.
The one thing I liked about the victory at Seneca Valley, not an easy place to play or broadcast from, to be honest with you, was the fact that, the Canes have really relied on the super freshman, Guy Cox. He's had a tremendous rookie season. But they were able to win last week and last night and win impressively. And he wasn't the dominant factor. Now, he was pretty darn good in certain other aspects. He did well numbers-wise on the glass, but he didn't fill up the score sheet. But it just shows you the depth that this Red Hurricanes team has under Coach Blundo, our team of the week a few weeks ago. What a joy it was to chat with him.
That was so fun to listen to, Don. If anybody hasn't checked that out, go back and find it on the Trib website, because that was an awesome like it always is when you two chat. It's almost not fair to have you two together on a podcast.
He's just you can pretty much pick a topic out of midair and have a conversation with him. And it might not be the most intelligent conversation, depending on what the topic is, but he's a lot of fun, great guy, and obviously a tremendous coach. And they had that little hiccup a couple weeks ago, but they have bounced back nicely. And this section has been a blast. I thought that Section 2 might be of the same ilk. We've seen Upper St. Clair kind of run away and hide. They're going to try to seal the deal tomorrow when they play Imani Christian again, and a victory will clinch the section title for them. There is nothing being clinched in Section 1. You got Fox Chapel, Seneca Valley, and Newcastle all fighting for the top spot, but then the race for playoff spots 4 and 5 are awesome too. You have Butler, North Hills right now in control of those final 2 playoff spots at 5 and 6, Pine Richland 4 and 7, Woodland Hills 3 and 8. I think the ship has sailed for North Allegheny, and it's starting to leave the shore for Woodland Hills. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see more than 5 teams qualify from Section 1, and it just shows you how competitive this playoff is going to be, because Upper St. Clair is the team to beat, but they can be beat even though they check a lot of boxes: size, speed, guard play. They're going to be tough to beat, but these teams in Section 1 and even beyond the top 3 are going to make the 6A tournament a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that's what 6A basketball should be. You should have
Right,
any given night, anything can happen if you don't play your
right.
game. And I think that's what was most impressive. You kind of alluded to it. Yeah, Kai Cox, he didn't put the ball in the hoop, and whether it was, shots weren't falling or Seneca Valley was focusing on him, but he went to a different aspect of his game. He had 10 assists in the game last
Yep.
night. I mean, that's, especially for a freshman, absolutely incredible. You look at the numbers overall, though. Yeah, right now he's averaging 18 points per game. Ralphie Blundo at 16, Damian Harrison at 13. Last year, Blundo averaged about 21, 22 a game, and Damian Harrison was at like 16 or 17 a game. They've both taken a step back because not only
Right.
with Kai Cox, but with some other role players as well, that you have more variety of scoring this year. And I think that's the biggest key to this Newcastle team's success has been, yeah, obviously the freshman's the leading scorer. That looks really big on the headlines, but it's the variety of scoring, allowing your premier guys like a Blundo and Harrison, you don't have to put up 20 each game.
Yeah, and those guys proved last year, like you said, that they could take on more weight on the shoulders. But it's the domino effect that when you have this freshman that comes in and sort of eases that burden in many aspects, not only the scoring sheet, but the glass and the loose balls and the distribution of the basketball. Those guys aren't asked to do more, and thus they can do a better job at what they are asked to do.
The table's still in front of the Canes for sure as well, because with that rematch against Fox Chapel, they win that one and win out. They would have a share of the section title, but they would have a sweep over Fox Chapel, and at worst, they'd be tied as well with Seneca Valley, which they split with. So it would be, quote unquote, officially the section title outright.
You mentioned something earlier when we were talking about the girls' side too, that I think a lot of fans should realize that in 99.9% of the cases where teams split, the committee will reward the most recent result.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's fair or not, I think the only time they won't is in the case of, let's say, Neshannock and Aliquippa girls were reversed, and Neshannock won by 30 the first time, and then Aliquippa won in overtime.
Mm-hmm.
They still might lean toward Neshannock, but most cases it's the second result that leads to a higher seed. So I think that's important. Also, I wanted to ask you, as we take care of behind the scenes business on the air, will you guys be doing that game? Because if not, we will.
The Newcastle Fox Chapel game?
Correct.
No, we will not be going on the road for that one. So we will direct everybody.
I'll promote that we will.
We will be directing everybody to Trib that night. No question
That's right.
about it. No question about
that's
it.
Good.
Yes, sir. You heard it right here, folks, on the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. You can check out that Newcastle game rematch against the Foxes. And that one's a mercy rule the first time, too. And, keep sending Chris Harlan to the games if you want it to be a mercy rule, apparently, this year, because
senior mercy rule, yeah.
We joked at halftime, because it was a tie game, by the way, Don, when Newcastle and Fox Chapel played the first time. It was tied, I think, 27-27. And I leaned over to Chris and said, "You finally don't have to see a mercy rule." And then with about 30 seconds left, I wrote a little note as he was writing something down. I said, "Mercy rule." And he looked at the clock and his jaw dropped. We didn't even realize that it had gotten to that scoreline. That's how ridiculous that fourth quarter was in that game.
He had another blowout last night. He did the Baldwin route of South Fayette. It wasn't a mercy rule, but it was very one-sided. So, yeah, if you see Chris coming to cover a game for Trib HSSN, know that the odds are it won't go to overtime.
Give a shout out to one of your premier camera operators and producers in Jess Levo, because I think she's up to 7 mercy rules herself this year as well. She just she picks the right ones.
And I'm the one that has to hear about it too.
Oh, I'm sure.
All these guys keeping score of their mercy rule games.
You just remember that come scheduling, come playoff time, which is coming up very, very soon as we're here on our Stretch Run podcast. Let's jump down to Class 3A here for a moment. Another big rematch coming up next week. We will have this one on the air on Tuesday night as Aliquippa comes to Bessemer to take on Mohawk. And I think Coach Olaire has a really great mentality with this is he basically said it without saying it. Like, we expect to see this team 3, maybe even a 4th time this year. If we don't win the first time, it's not the end of the world. They need to come to our place, see what happens there. Even then, we're probably going to see him a 3rd time down the road the way things are going. It didn't go well down in Aliquippa, that's for sure. But you're going to have a completely different atmosphere, obviously, when it's on your home gym coming up.
Kudos to Mike too. I'm a big fan. I think he does a tremendous job, from going from the girls and now to the boys. Yeah, he has them the bounce back. That's always a big thing. You're going to have nights where just nothing's going wrong. You just got to make sure that doesn't mount, that you don't go mopey dope into practice the next couple of days, and then before you know it, you've lost 2 in a row and 3 in a row. Mohawk responded positively after that big loss to Aliquippa. 2 of the better players in the area, Bobby Fadden, Mr. Do-It-All. They always seem to have a guy who just thrives at everything. Bobby's that. Then, of course, another Rona, Drew Rona, has scored a lot of points too. I think what they need to do is they need to compete. Even if they don't win at home against Aliquippa, compete, because if you do see the Quips down the road, either in the district playoffs or the state playoffs, if you compete, you can play with them. You get blown out again, there's going to be those bad thoughts in the back of your head if you do go up against them a 3rd time.
Elwood City in 3rd place in the section right now, and they've played twice against Mohawk. Solid games. The scoreline may not indicate it. I think it was a 17 and a 20-point defeat in the end, but played very solid performances against Mohawk in both of those games. They have something to build on as well, does Elwood City and Coach Bradley. And what I like about them is they didn't try to go, and put it all on one guy to try to turn into Joseph Roth 2.0. Aaron Lake is certainly doing his best. I mean, he's averaging a double-double with 16 points, 12 rebounds a game. He's getting up to Joe Roth numbers, but a lot of active players, both offensively and defensively. When you have 6 players averaging 7.5 points per game or more, I think that says something right there to the balance in your squad.
Yeah, and it's also emphasis on program again. This is a team that, once Joe graduated, major loss, no question. He did so much for that team over the last couple of years, really his entire scholastic career. But, you don't have the big guy and you sort of standing around. It's easy to fall into bad habits. Dan Bradley, veteran coach, make sure that doesn't happen. Aaron Lake becomes the go-to guy, and it's paid off. They've had a nice season. 3rd place, they've secured a playoff spot out of Section 1. No shame, trailing Aliquippa and Mohawk. And it's a team that really, when you look at what's going on in Sections 2, Sections 3, and 4, they're really in 3A. It is extremely top-heavy. You look at Aliquippa, you look at Mohawk, you look at Bishop Canevin. Don't be deceived by their record. I saw them. Very good team. Another good team that should make a nice deep run is South Allegheny, the leaders of Section 3. But after that, it's a bunch of good teams, and I think Elwood City falls into that category. So, there's reason to believe this section has had success. This northern section has had success in the past in the postseason, and it's you can easily write a script that the Wolverines make it past round 1, make it past the quarterfinals, and are flirting with a title game run.
Before we talk about 2A, when does the brackets unveiling show happen this year, Don?
Monday, February 10th, if my calendar is right. I know it's Monday, the second Monday in February, but I think it's the 10th.
Yep, that is the 10th is correct. So cool. Well, we will be tuned into that one for sure to see exactly where Elwood City and Mohawk and many other county teams will line up for the playoffs. Finally, for us, Class 2A on the boys' side, Section 4, and this is going to be a fun finish to the year as well. Neshannock and Olsh split their regular season meetings. They're looking to be co-champions. The one game left that really could put a wrench in that one is senior night at the Cavelli Fieldhouse, Neshannock having to travel to Union. So much fun to see that game be a section game again for the first time. Don, I think it was since I was a senior in high school. I think it was the last time that they were section mates back in 2007, 2008. So that's going to be an absolute bloodbath to finish the year. And again, a game that means a lot for both teams. Neshannock to potentially clinch a share of the section title, moving down from 3A to 2A, and Union would really solidify a quality seed come playoff time if they can finish with a win over Neshannock and finish the year with just 3 section losses.
Kind of felt bad going way back to realignment during the off season for Mark Stanley.
Yeah.
They have these great teams that go, head to head with the juggernaut Imani Christian, and obviously come up on the short end of the stick. Now Imani Christian announces, hey, we're going all the way up to 6A, and here Union can't, although Neighborhood Academy is pretty darn good too, but Union gets bumped up to 2A, but very competitive. They're right there, losing twice to Our Lady of the Sacred Heart, already once to Neshannock. If they fall to the Lancers again and finish in third place, again, a team that you can see with Lucas Stanley having a magnificent season, one of the top 5 scorers in the WPIL, you could see them making a run, maybe not all the way, but making a run in Class 2. And I think they would try, the committee would try to keep these 3 teams sort of away from each other. You know how some teams or some sections will have 3 or 4 good teams that the committee goes out of their way to sort of separate them into quadrants. I could see them, Olsh and Neshannock definitely being on different sides of the bracket, but Union keeping them in a quadrant that where they wouldn't meet Neshannock or Olsh until the semifinals. So, well, that remains to be seen. But that's a good tune-up either way. No matter, obviously, there's a lot more at stake for Neshannock. They want to definitely get a share of the section title, tie Our Lady of the Sacred Heart, and would lead, no doubt, to one of the top seeds. But Union can go out, compete, and know that even if you lose, you could still make some noise in the postseason.
Here's the factoid for you right back at it, Don, as that game, when it's Neshannock against Union coming up, you're going to have Tony Parada for Neshannock going against Jamel Mitchell for Union on the basketball court. When they played before, it looked like a football game because they are both football linemen who have now both committed to play football at Slippery Rock. And so they're going to be battling against each other on the hardwood one last time before that happens. So that'll be a fun battle there. Neshannock, kind of similar in terms of their success this year, though, to what we talked about with Newcastle, in my mind, because of the balance that they've had. Parada coming back this year after missing almost all of last year with an injury. He's averaging 15 a game. Davey Quat is down to 16 points a game because he doesn't need to score as much. You throw in Jake Rind, a great number 3 scorer, and Talon Anderton in there as a good outside shooter as well. They have a lot of options this year, which I think is nice too, because a lot of John Corey's teams the last decade, it feels like they've had one main scorer and then some supporting cast. They're a much more diverse offense. And in fact, the first game against Union, Davey Quat didn't have a field goal, but they still found a way to win.
Yeah, and he's one that I like, Quat. I think he can be a difference maker. As you mentioned, the same scenario with the Anderson and Blundo at Newcastle, in that you've proven you can carry the load, but because of some changes, you don't have to, and then that makes your overall game even better and even more dangerous, and it just gives you depth. I think the biggest thing right now, an old coach told me years ago, and I don't think it's changed, the things that win games in the playoffs is guard play and depth. Yes, it's great to have that go-to guy, that one guy you can lean on in a clutch situation where you need a shot, but having that depth, having guys who can handle the rock, gals as well, that can handle the rock and allow you to do the things you want to do. Man, that's so valuable come February and March, and I think we are in our discussion here seeing there are several teams in the county that fit that bill that could be on their way to a long postseason run.
Union just defeated Shenango last night. A great comeback effort from the Cats, late, just short. And you want to talk about somebody who, a team that has an it guy like Joe Campoli. Keep an eye on that name. Put up a career high 32 last night. But they also have depth with 8 seniors on that roster. So that's a wild card type team then you're going to keep your eye on there for Shenango as well. The rest of Class 2A, Don, I mean, Swickley and Greensburg Central Catholic, I assume, are the teams that you're going to be watching for most likely as looking to get your top seeds, the teams to beat here in the 2A tournament.
Yeah, Swickley, there are a lot of headlines with some players coming to the program, not from the area, but maybe even not from the country. So I remember hearing a lot of things about them, and they haven't disappointed, going 14-2, and they're going to, in all likelihood, they still have a game with Northgate, but win that Section 2 title. Greensburg Central Catholic, in Section 1, they still have a game with Jeanette. Don't forget about the Jayhawks. They are 15-1 with that only loss being to the Centurions. They meet again coming up next week, and same situation. We could have co-champs there in Section 1 as we could have co-champs in Section 4. That muddies the water. That makes things a lot more difficult for the committee. A lot of teams bundled together in Section 3. Not sure of the overall strength, though, of that particular section. But and Northgate has built a nice program as well. So, keep your eye on the Flames and the Jayhawks. But I think GCC, Swickley Academy, Ocean, and Neshannock right now would be my 4 favorites.
At least 19 teams will be in the Class 2A tournament, so I know Don's excited to talk about pigtail games.
Pigtail games, that's right.
Plenty of them coming up. At least, what would that be? At least 3 pigtail games for sure in the Class 2A tournament. Well, Don Rebel, that's it feels like old times, doesn't it?
I've said it before when I was in the host seat, that you do tremendous work. Now that you're sort of running the show up there, you wear a lot of hats and you wear them well, but nobody does their homework better. And I've always enjoyed our chats, whether it be on HSSN or on LSN. It doesn't matter where we're chatting. I've always enjoyed it.
I appreciate it, Don. I have as well, and I'm sure we will be chatting plenty coming up as we finish up the regular season and get into the playoffs as we try to find a way to get as many games covered over the course in the next few weeks, because that's all.
Amen.
That's all we care about. Well, thanks again,
Yep.
Don Rebel. Make sure you check out who are your athlete and team of the week coming up on your podcast right now.
This past week, it was Emma Larkin of Geibel Catholic for the girls, and Colton Strait of Montour for the boys. And then our teams of the week were Our Lady of the Sacred Heart girls and Baldwin boys.
Check all those out and all of the recaps all year long as well on the Rebel Yell podcast, as we're glad to have him on board here today to get ready for our stretch run of games coming up. Games we'll have next week. Again, we mentioned Aliquippa Mohawk. We'll have a doubleheader on Friday. We'll have the audio-only broadcast, Newcastle hosting North Allegheny in the finale on Friday, and that Neshannock traveling to Union rematch as well. Thanks again, Penn Ohio Bottled Water, for delivering these podcasts each and every week. Big shout out to them. By the way, final factoid for you, Shenango coach Brian Ches, the owner and CEO of Penn Ohio Bottled Water. So big shout out to him for all that he does for us as well. For Don Rebel, I'm James Dotson saying so long and stay tuned. Thank you for tuning in on the Lawrence County